Ladies and gentlemen, we are back to the Elevated Entrepreneur. I'm your host, as always, Raylan Davis, and I'm joined by one of my closest friends. We met recently, not recently, we met over like 2 years ago, Jesse, which is nuts. But we have her on the podcast today because not only does she have a different background than most coaches and consultants, but also she's a very strategic thinker. And you all know, if you listen to this podcast, I suck at strategy. So that's why she is here today to help us all out. Please welcome my guest, Miss Jesse. What's going on?
Let me tell you, the years that have gone by fast, the growth, the evolution, which is so amazing, because I think sometimes people think that like the first day you wake up, it just all makes sense. And the reality is like we're going through like this journey. So to see your journey and evolution and to go along on my own, I'm just happy to be here and see all the good things that are going on in your life. I love it.
Well, it's been fun too, because again, like we met on Clubhouse during the good old days, and I think back then more than now, because I don't go on Clubhouse anymore. But then you knew your online people more, because we used to talk every single day, and what was fascinating was like you could tell, and this is my humble opinion about social audio, you could tell when someone's legit or not because they had the same tone every day. Like their advice their advice may evolve, but it never flat out completely changed. Their brand messaging never changed. And you were one of those people that were like tried and true, all those things. So what I want to start with you is a little bit of background on Jesse. Like talk to us a little bit about obviously your business, but also too, like maybe start with, you know, how you've evolved over the last like few years. Because when I first met you, I was like, oh, she's really good at social media. But then it turns out like you do events, and then it turns out also like you do some coaching. So, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it has been even an evolution for myself. So I've had my own event coordinating business now since 2011. I originally jumped out. So I haven't really technically worked in corporate America now since 2009, 2010. So it's been a very long time. I've been out in these entrepreneur streets. And before I started my own business, I was actually a full-time plus size model, but I was still someone that went to school for academics. I'm a reader. Like I did sales before when I was in corporate America, which helped me with developing and things of that nature. So that also helped me with starting my business because I knew a lot about the sales and infrastructure that goes along into building a corporation. So when it came to starting my own business, I wasn't scared to do sales calls. I wasn't scared to put myself out there because I knew it was a numbers game. If I had to develop a whole new territory, they gave me the territory and then I did the research. And that's just kind of how it was for me. When I started my event coordinating business, things were really growing. I really expected in 2020, March 2020, I was like, yes, the company is going to be, because we ended the year 2019 over 300,000 in revenue. So we were like, okay, we can definitely 2020 is going to be the year we cross that $500,000 mark. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have all of these great clients in different cities and states. It's going to be awesome. And then March 14th happened. And then March 16th, we have 14 St. Patty's Day events canceled in a blink of an eye. And I never really thought what next, which has been my evolution, and transparency is that even when I was talking to my business coach this week, I was like, man, like all these years, I've just been limiting myself to being that event coordinator, not really thinking about what else can I do? How can I grow personally? What areas can I develop within my own career? And the pandemic, as uncomfortable as it has been for me, it has really forced me into a position of thinking, what else do I offer? What else do I know? And one of the biggest things that came to me was that I definitely sleep on a lot of my skill sets. So when things that were just naturally coming to me with the social media, people are like, oh, what about this? And I'm like, okay, like I've been doing, things that are just second nature, which is great when you're starting a business, is that it's not I think sometimes what happens is that we try to create things that are so much out of our wheelhouse compared to looking at the skills and the talents we have already. And so what happened was things that I naturally was saying, I don't do that, but it came to me naturally, were the things that helped me with exploring more. So that's why I started doing the social media stuff. And I'm just like, that's not really what I want to do. I can do it, but do I want to really live that life? It's not for me. Like, it takes a certain kind of person. And then the coaching came about because, again, I was blinders on. Like, my company was growing, we were, evolving. I didn't only, like, in my head, I didn't think I was a one leg company. We had I didn't have all my business in one company, one, because I do B2B. I didn't have all of my clients in one basket. So I was like, boom, if this management company doesn't like me, no worries, I got more. And then, like, oh, if there ever happens something in this city and state, no worries, I have this one. So but when you all do the same thing and a pandemic happens and you can't do it anymore, you really only have one income stream. Yes, it might be different major clients, it might be different cities and states, but at the end of the day, it's only a one leg in your business. So with coaching, though, what came about was that things that got me to the point where we were doing crazy numbers and revenue, and then doing a lot of events and gaining new clients and gaining new market share, I just assumed that was the case for everybody else. Like, I was like, y'all having problems with this? What are you talking about? I'm like, I want a trajectory to hit the 1 million mark. What are you talking about? Like, you can't figure this out? Like, I was totally oblivious to a lot of things that were going on. So then here we go again, people asking me, and I'm like, I don't do that. Like, that's been the biggest aha moment for me since the pandemic, and like since we met, was whenever I find myself saying I don't do that, that's something I actually need to lean into, because it's something that I'm strong at, and that's something I can explore, instead of boxing myself into, this is Jesse, the event coordinator type of role. And so here we are today, because I do love systems. I am an analytical person. I think about processes. I'm all about how do things run efficiently. And I started having people ask me, how do you get these things set up? And then, of course, my response is always, I don't do that. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I do that. Like, and so now I'm going into like 2023 with a whole new different focus with who I am, not who I pigeon myself into being, and also the niche that I put myself into, because the knowledge I have, as much as I want to only help event planners and people in that space, is something that could actually impact people in other industries and niches outside of what I know and where I've been.
I absolutely love that, the idea of being open to the idea that you are not who you like think you are, and like you are capable of more. Because the way that I've always looked at like offer building in general started from, because like you have a sales background, and instead of saying like I don't do that, I just always said that, yeah, I do that, and then I just figured out how I would do it. And I would just find the right people, and that's how I accidentally built a marketing agency, was because I was tired of my clients. What happened was I just was tired of hearing excuses. So a lot of our coaches were like, I just don't have time to create that much content, Raylan. I don't have time. And so I was like, okay, what if I just did it for you? And I just named a price, and the person was like, okay, yeah, I would do that. All right, no problem. And I just found people that could execute. And then, fast forward, oops, I accidentally created an agency. But I think one of the things that, especially for you, I'm biased as hell, but I just put on an event or live workshop, right? And Kayla is really good at doing events because she used to do them for Genius Network, and so she's been around like entrepreneur events. But still, I didn't realize how much went into an event. I just was like, oh, I just will tell people I have an event, and then people will come, and then I will teach them things. Like, there was so much shit. First of all, the money wise, I underestimated. I'm embarrassed to say, I spent 30 grand doing that event. And in my head, I'm not joking, I thought I was going to spend 10. Like, I was like, I'm going to spend 10. Like, no, it was 30. Like, it was a lot.
I mean, the space alone, if it's not a comp space, I mean, the spaces alone can cost people a lot of money. So like, and then you got to get food,
Yeah,
like food and drinks.
$1,500 on food one of the days. Like I just I didn't do all the, and then the ads I had to run, and then I also, here's the other thing, and I have a point to this, but I made the most grave marketing mistake, and this is why also too I'm really glad that I spent the money that I did, and I'm glad we did it because we're gonna do it again in May or June. I'll tell you where we're gonna do it in a second because I'm super excited about it.
Okay.
But I fucked up so bad. Okay, so I had people going to the landing page for the event, ran ads directly to the landing page. We had like 2,000 visitors. We didn't have I wanted to sell it at 30, and we only got 18 people. And a lot of those people were people that are in my academy already. All right, so what went wrong? I didn't do an application-based thing. So out of those people, I had an average of like 2,000, 3,000 visitors to that, and then around 400 people that clicked on the button to get their ticket. I don't have any of their fucking emails because I didn't set it up to where it was like name, email, and then here's the checkout page.
Oh, so you can't even remarket to them at all.
So it's one of those things that like I think having someone like you, and this is my point of this, what I see for you, and you didn't ask me for this, but what I would love is if you did events for coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, because you can
Braylon,
yes.
It's come up so many times. Like, go ahead though. Go ahead.
Like,
go ahead.
Here's the brilliant thing of you is you know the event side, but you also know sales. So like you would have said, hey, Raylan, walk me through the whole process of how we're going to obviously get people butts in seats. All right, well, you probably would have caught that mistake. My whole team missed it. You would have caught it and said, yeah, we need to collect, emails because if they don't, we could just remarket them. We could retarget them. We could do all these things. And then so you could help out on that side, but also then you could help out on the actual event coordination. And then on top of that, you can add another payment plan where I could pay you to fly out to the event and help me sell on stage, help me figure out how to, all those things. And you do rev share on top of that, Jesse? You kidding me? You would crush.
But then, it's so, and that's what's so funny about this. And again, that's the evolution thing, because I was talking to someone because as much as I love what we do, and I do events. So for anyone that wants to know what kind of events I do events for luxury apartment complexes. That's my niche that I serve. And I was just like, you know what, really, the reality is like, do I really want to do this in another 5 to 10 years? I'm like, so I'm looking at like a franchise model or some type of I train people how to do it and they pay me and then they can be certified. Like those are things I'm flirting around with because long term, do I personally want to do it? No, but I want to make sure that I'm building a network of people. But while I'm playing around with it, I'm like, you know what? I really want to get into corporate events. I like with what you're talking about. And I was looking and talking to a recruiter as like, hey, I'm trying to pivot in events. I would love to do event coordinating, get into the corporate space. But one of the things that, again, with me having blinders on, and this is something that anyone that's an entrepreneur that's listening to is, you never want to stop learning. You never want to stop thinking about how do I get myself better, but not only from a entrepreneur standpoint, but as a person, like a career goal kind of thing. So if it's getting another certification, if it's going to courses that are going to help you with understanding more about your skill set, those are all going to be important, not just only the business side, because I had business coaches, I was doing things, but I was always just looking at it as an entrepreneur standpoint, not a career standpoint. So when I'm going to talk to the recruiter, she's like, they really want to make sure that, because there's actually certifications in corporate events. She's like, they're really wanting you to have this degree. They're really wanting you to have these things so that, of course, if someone's giving $500,000 for these big, those big, elaborate ones, they want to make sure that you're trained in those things. And I was like, I never thought out of 10 years, I was so, again, as much as I did not like the process of the last couple of years, it really opened my eyes to blind spots in my career development and my business development that if I didn't have those pauses, I don't think that I would have taken the time to ever look at until it just would have not worked anymore. So like going into next year, because it's a lot of project management that's involved. And I was like, you know what? I'm about to go get me a certification in project management. And I'm like, then that way, when I'm going to mid-sized businesses and I want to go in and do a structure change, I have the credentials on top of everything else, the experience and, you know, who I am, that's going to leverage me even better in that space. So when a friend, I mentioned to her, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about pivoting. She's like, you know what? It's really big. And I see people, and she's like, you should really see about getting with like different coaches. She's like, because everyone's doing these community things, and all it is no longer focusing on apartment communities, but it's business communities and like culture communities. And it's just a different flavor, because one of the things too with events that people don't always realize is that it's more psychological than what people are present to. You know, like it's and when I say psychological, is like understanding what kind of experience you want. How do you create a space where people enjoy? Understanding what are going to be some of the blocks. How do you keep them engaged? What will get them interested in coming? Because like I'll have some people that maybe they do business finance or like finances stuff, and they hear from one of my clients, my corporate clients, like, hey, you should really reach out to Jesse. And the person's like, oh, I do financial education. Can we be a part of one of your events? I'm like, first of all, that don't sound fun to most people. Like, so if I put I'm like, yes, they have 300 units in their building, which might be 600 people. But how do I get even 6 of those 600 into a space about financial education? There has to be something else there that's going to sell it. So when we have these great ideas on how to build some type of event, you want to think about the psychology, not from a space of what do you get out of it? Because yes, you can make money off of them. But if people aren't interested, they won't buy the tickets. If there's not clarity, they won't buy the tickets. And if it's not a fun experience that leaves them on a high, you know, and it doesn't mean that it felt good the whole time, because sometimes you go through these breakthroughs, so to break down, to break out, you know, break back up. But at the end of it, they feel good. Like there's more than just, hey, I'm doing an event. And I think often, even in my space still today, people are like, oh, we're just going to have food out. I'm like, okay, cool. They're going to take the food and go home. Yeah. What are you going to do to create an environment for people to stay, not just get fed? I'm like, if you just want to feed them, just put out some Chick-fil-A.
Also, to your point, here's something else I screwed up, and hopefully for those entrepreneurs out there who are planning on doing an event, you can learn from me. So here's another reason why I think we didn't sell out was the feedback I got back after the fact for people that looked at the landing page was that they said it was too intimidating. Because it was basically, I said, all these coaching programs are telling you, give me 10 grand, I'm going to teach you all these things over the course of 6 months. And I go, cool, I'm going to do all of that in 2 days. So in 2 days, you're going to learn how I built a 6-figure coaching agency, and I'm going to teach it in 2 days. Well, people came back to me and was like, that just sounded scary, like a lot. Mm-hmm. So next time it's like, okay, how do we make it more fun? Because what do people actually want? Well, people want to go network. Yeah. They want to have fun. They want to, versus what I was selling was you're not gonna sleep for 2 days. Like that was my
and they're like, no, I don't want that.
Exactly. And so I'm scratching my head like, man, why are no people? But it's because unfortunately, like I'm selling, and this is a marketing thing, I was selling what I thought people should want versus what they actually want.
Yeah.
And that was my mistake. Is that like because our thing is about like no bullshit, but turns out people want a little bit of bullshit. They want a little bit.
They do.
You know.
And two, it's like sometimes people are going to be honest with themselves on like where they really are. Like for them to have the kind of breakthrough in which you're, you know, saying that they can get. The reality is that you're in that type of space, you're having to break through their own mental boundaries on what they think that they can get out of it.
Possible.
So, yeah, you know what I mean? So like, not only are you breaking through the price barrier, you're breaking through their own self-belief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
like
I said, I didn't think through that part of it enough to say like, okay, we need to soften it a little bit, not to the point where like we're like everybody else, but I think for our next go around, we're going to soften it just a little bit from that. But on the event side for you, then, like I know you just started learning more about like, is it Honeybook?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your plan with the project management side of the house? Are you going to be doing that for companies? Because also too, like that's one of our biggest pain points in our company right now is the project management side, because it's not my team's fault, it's my fault, because every 2 days I have a new idea. so we need more people like you is what I'm saying. So walk me through, I guess, like that part of it for crazy ass entrepreneurs like me that come up with new ideas every 2 days.
Yeah, so that is the direction I'm going into more into next year. I am going to still be taking on events, and like the last week, I've been breaking down like what do I really want my focus to be going into 2023, so that I'm laying a foundation for what I want the next 5 years to look like. So going into next year, I'm planning on getting my business analyst certification. I'm also going to get certified in Asana and Zapier, because those are great platforms that, of course, Honeybook isn't always going to be a great fit for everyone, but I do need to know how to use integrations with a platform like Zapier to be able to help with mending the pieces that are often missing when we're using, 5-6 different platforms that may make sense because there's not something that has all in one, but you don't want it to be because they're not communicating with each other, or that platform doesn't have that integration built in, that you're just losing out on an opportunity to expand your capacity and your what I would say production, because those are the things that really
like
suffocate.
Monday?
Yeah, it's like Monday. It's like Dubsado. It's just that Honeybook is a visual platform, in my opinion, and it was more intuitive to me. So when I was looking for a platform to start using, I wanted something that, again, was user-friendly for me, but also visually aesthetic, because, again, people want to be able to see with their eyes and have an understanding. And with their recent upgrade, they even allow for you to add videos into your brochures for people. Yeah, so you can do your automations, you can do your email, you can do your invoicing, contracts, follow up. Like you can build your whole automation flow. So like for my event planning side of my life, my automation flow is like 14 steps. So I don't have to worry about where am I at on the like workflow process. All I do is go into my actual Honeybook account, and I can see like today I have, with the amount of events that we have open, I have 257 tasks that need to be done through my workflow. But today I only have to focus on 6.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you, on the psychology side of project management, do you have any like ideas or thoughts around how do you get your team and maybe even yourself to really adhere? Because we've had a Monday for a while, and we just now switched over to a better process that we think might help for like putting out content, et cetera. The problem is to make it a daily habit of going in there has actually been kind of challenging. So like for the team anyway, like they're not going in every day, they're not updating it every day. And including me, like I am so used to just calling someone and going, "Hey, I need you to go do this thing," and my team's gonna be yelling at me like, "Raylan, go in Monday and put it in as a thing to do." So, like, do you have any tips on like how to make yourself, maybe your team, adhere to that, so that way it could do its job of the project management side?
I wish I had an easy answer for you. It's just going to take stuff falling apart enough to realize we need to use the system because that's where you learn. Because there's been times where I know I've set up someone's account, but they rather still send people to just pay on a link instead of having them go through the workflow. So then that means none of the emails are going through to them. They're still piecing. So it's like, you either have to choose, like have enough discomfort to go with the process. It might be the process needs to change, but it might be not. When you're creating, I think ultimately when you're using any kind of project management, there's going to be your will is going to be challenged. Like it's going to be like, let me not do it organized. Like
one of the things that I've kind of started to do, because I mentioned before, like my new challenge going into next year has been, which has been so fascinating for me, is getting back into leadership. So when I first started out in corporate, why I wanted to become a coach is because I got obsessed with coaching my team. And then it turned into coaching for like a business. So I was coaching other people. And now what's funny is now that I'm coaching my own team, it's like I forgot how to be a leader. So like I'm like going back to going, okay, what kind of meeting should I have? Like what should those look like? So I think partly what I'm going to do, because I just started doing this week of having 15-minute calls with everybody on the team. And I think maybe in those calls, I'll just go, pull up your Monday right now. What's outdated? What haven't you updated? All right, look, cool. And then that way, like every day until they get used to it, then I can stop doing that.
And then too, you just need to make sure the tasks are assigned to them and the platform sending them the notifications, because that's ultimately, so I'm infamous. Like, I guess a tip would be is that if someone's not going into it, if you see that there's a task pending for someone, I mention that person. Hey, what's the status on this? I don't email them. I don't text them. I send it through that platform, because that's the only way that you build up that type of, and then too, as you start to stand more into structure, people start to follow that structure. So like my VA, she knows like Jesse is very, I don't want to say I'm particular, but I like to be organized. Like, so Jesse's going to see that you have a task pending, and tomorrow she's definitely going to mention you. And that's out of a space of love, of course. So now when I don't do what I say I need to do, it's getting assigned to me. Hey, Jesse, I can't do this because you haven't given me this. And I'm like, fair. So it comes from you, for them to know that you're actually watching it and encouraging them to use it, for them to, because the more you, like, even if I have, like for the event planning stuff in my life, like if a caterer sends like, hey, Jesse, da, 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 cool, email it to me, don't text it. Put it in this message so that I know, because it don't work if it's in my cell phone. Like, that's not what we're using our mobile devices for. So it's until you put that structure that they don't put that structure. So I don't have people violating it unless they aren't used to who I am, and then eventually they get in line with it. So it takes you.
Well, yeah, 100%. Like, at least I'm self-aware enough to know I'm the problem. Like, it's that, like, because I'm just not a structured person. I'm very much like, I get an idea, I run with it, let's do this, okay, then I want to hand it off to somebody else. But I think there's no other way about it. And that's why, again, I've been diving more into how can I be a better leader for my team? Because, again, they're not going to be able to get to where they want to be unless I, again, like, follow through on what I want to do. But it's just very counterintuitive to me. Like, I think I did a Gallup test. One of our clients is real big on the Gallup test, so I did that. And it basically, it's like I'm 100% a visionary, 0% like execution. Like zero. Like, I don't have any execution in my body. And so that's why, again, I think what's really important, and I want to talk to you about this because you're also really, really good at this, is you have to be self-aware enough to know where you fall short. And mine has always been execution. So I got executors on my team. Like, that was one of the biggest things. Can I get somebody that I have to tell to do something one time and they run with it? Because here's the truth. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a new idea. I'm going to forget about the thing I even told you. So I need that done before tomorrow. So that way, I don't come up with something else,
But here's the thing, is also being present to, is that slowing us down?
Yeah. So actually, this is why, again, I think I have like the best team for me, is because Elisa, she does a lot of she's kind of the strategy behind the content for all of her clients. And I was talking to her about a hang up on the sales side for agency. And I said, I'm really, really frustrated with what's going on here. And I said, I think instead I want to change the process to be like this. And I build a whole new process. And she goes, Raylan, you're doing that thing again that you do where when you feel a little anxious, you create chaos because you like to bring order to chaos. There is no chaos right now. You don't need to do this. And I was like, okay. So like my team tells me like, hey, knock it the fuck off. Stop. You don't need to create anything anymore. Like, we're good. You just got to let it breathe. And I'm like, okay. Like, and it calms me down. But that's why I think it's important to, again, know who you are and then have your team be able to speak frankly with you, because, you know, I'm very much the type, like, again, I took a test a long time ago. I think it was Myers-Briggs, maybe one of those. And basically I thought personality tests are full of shit. And then I read my excerpt from me doing it, and it literally said in there that I am an expert in bringing order to chaos. However, if there's no chaos, I will create it. I was like, shit, that's me.
Because you know how to work in that, you know, like, and I think that too is knowing about you, but also being able to understand that for your team members as well too, so that you're able to support them, re-guide them. And I think too, of leadership is also being able to create a space where people can be open to, you know, call you out on your stuff. I mean, because even recently when I was talking to my VA and I was telling her like, okay, we're gonna do this with it. And she's like, whoa. What are we really gonna be doing? She's like, how are we really going to grow? And also she was like, do you even want to grow that?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, not really. You know, so I think that if you don't have a checks and balance system within your company, or at least if they're not an employee, but like if you have a mentor group or a coach group or just a solid person that you can ask, you always want to make sure that you're reaching out to someone that's going to, and here's the thing too, is not thinking that that person's hating on you. Like if you think that every time someone's correcting you, that they're hating on you and they're trying to make your vision small, no, Sway. They're just trying to help you with your vision to make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense to someone that's outside, and it's not for them to understand it, but for them not to have the I don't know face going on because it just doesn't make any sense. Like that's something that you have to be very present to. And I think that we're so quick to throw around, you know, people are my haters just because they say maybe it's not good that you jump to a new task every day. No, it really doesn't help to jump to a task different, you know, so I think that there's so many different levels of leadership, and John C. Maxwell has a book and I think there's also one, Tribal Leadership as well, talks about the different levels of leadership that's out there. And it's just understanding like where you are in your journey within being a leader, also leaning into the areas in which you may not be the strongest at, because I would honestly think that as long as you're living and you run a business, there's always going to be an area for you to grow within your leadership. I mean, Elon Musk has areas of growth in his leadership, you know, like, and we won't know until another couple of years as to how he's leaning into that or not, you know, but.
So you brought up, so I want to get into this a little bit because I don't understand. Okay, so my favorite, he's like my favorite entrepreneur, like by far.
Okay.
And I want to talk about this and I want to hear your thoughts on it, but I've been surprised by how many people are counting him out with Twitter when I'm like, have you not been paying attention to this man's track record? Like, I get it. Like, you don't like Twitter, you don't like him, but like, let's be honest here. Everybody that's ever bet against Elon has lost. And so like one of the things that I love that he did, because I remember some people were like, oh, he fired all these people, and I don't know enough to talk about it probably, but I'm going to go into it anyway because it's my fucking podcast. If you don't like it, then turn it off. But one of the things that he did was he fired a bunch of people, right? And then he had this picture of like a very tight-knit crew. And there's people going like, that's, you know, Twitter's going to be whatever. Well, he brought in all these engineer types from Tesla. And I'm like, you got to remember, this man sends shit to space. Like, he could figure Twitter out. If anyone's going to figure it out, it'll be him. And it's not going to happen overnight. So I'm just kind of curious, when you talk about his leadership style, like, what do you feel like is some of his growth? Because to me, what I really value about Elon is his very no bullshit approach to, if you do a good job, like I remember when he first did a talk with Twitter, and they're like, what about work from home? And he's like, if you're the top performer, you could do whatever the fuck you want. If you're not, guess what? You're going to bring your ass back in the office, and if that doesn't help your performance, then you're going to be gone. Like, that's it. Like, there's no emotion to it. It's like, do a good job, do whatever you want. And then so anyway, but what are your thoughts on his leadership and stuff?
So, I think that he's in the stage of leadership where it has to all be about him. And that suffocates because I'm not active on Twitter. You know, I follow you and a few other people. And like now, and maybe because I haven't been following a lot of him, but now I see it more about personality than leadership.
Yeah,
like, and I think that that's going to, like, that's just where he is. Like that, we know if we had someone that was leading us that was like that, you're not leading me long. So that's going to automatically limit you getting people that are going to be great additions to your business because you're in your jackass stage of your leadership. Like, and he's too much in that, and you're going to get more followers or people that want to be attached to it than actual people that are going to want the ownership. And we also have to remember the change in the work environment now is that a lot of people aren't just like, people will work for companies, but they're not just working for companies just to work for companies. So it's all about the culture. It's about people wanting to be a part. And he doesn't exude like he's an asshole right now. Like he's full-fledged rocket ship to asshole them right now.
What part do you feel like is the asshole part?
I just think he's intentionally just being one. Like, you just being intentionally one, like, that's not someone just taking what you say out of context, because that happens. But when you intentionally are just doing jerk moves just because you want to stir the pot, that to me isn't a good space to be in for one attracting. Like, I get that you might need to purge your crew of people, but he ain't really doing a great job of attracting new. I mean, he's been on, like, I wouldn't look at how he presents himself right now and say, I want to be a part of Twitter. Like,
yeah, I think that like the one thing that I will say is that his personality is funny, and obviously it's great for marketing, but also I think that it's not him that attracts, because I'm not an engineer, but based on his talent at Tesla, his talent at SpaceX, and then now like starting to be a little bit with Twitter, it seems like from an engineer perspective, people aren't signing up to work with Elon because of Elon. They're signing up because of the mission. Like, he has that mission of like, I want to help humanity, right? And so if you work with Elon, and this is just very anecdotal, I've seen some former engineers, some people that would love to work with Elon talk about it, and also some former engineers, but they all say the same thing, which is like, if you work with Elon, you know you're going to do some shit that's like going to transcend what anybody else is doing. Like, and so he's kind of like our today's version of, you know, I don't want to, not exactly, but like Henry Ford. Like, there's that talk, I think it was in Think and Grow Rich, where they talk about how he walked in and was like, I want a 4-cylinder. And they're like, that's impossible. He's like, fuck you, give me a 4-cylinder. Like, that's kind of Elon. He's like, we're going to Mars, get it done. And he's also, the one thing I will say from a leadership perspective that I appreciate is that, like, he's not afraid to sleep in a fucking warehouse until it gets done. You know what I mean? Now, granted, he doesn't have a fucking personal life, I think, because of that, but that's a whole nother thing.
I mean, but then too, like, and I think perception is going to be based off of individual. So like for me, when I was in corporate America, I loved the passion of my leadership, but my last review, I was like, I love what y'all make, but I don't want to do what you're doing. But I am that person. Like, that's probably why I can look at how he presents himself, and it's absolutely no attraction at all to wanting to even be attached to anyone like that. Like, but that's also too understanding the kind of culture you're creating. Would I thrive in a culture like that? Hell to the no. Like, there's nothing about that type of structure, even if it's about something bigger, that I would even want that to be in my ecosystem. But then there's some people that so like, and I think too, how we can apply this to anyone that's listening, that's thinking about like me growing my team. This is not a conversation about Elon and to like Elon or not like Elon. This is honestly about what kind of culture you're creating in your company that are going to either make people attract to it, good people, or is going to repel people away from you, because that's what and here's the thing is that Henry Ford could have been the way that he was back then, because people, their loyalty to companies was a different space.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even from some of the stories I read, like, yeah, he let go a lot of people. A lot of people quit.
Yeah.
Because this generation, like this, I would say the millennial, like pretty much the mid-20s to mid-40s, screw you and your culture. I'll find a job somewhere else if I don't like what you're about. So it's a different sense of loyalty. So what we have to be present to as we're building our businesses as entrepreneurs is that, granted, you don't want everybody to work for you, but you don't want it to be that the people you really want to work with you because you're a douchebag, they don't want to work with you, you know? So like, you know, I think that we have to be really present to that. So yes, there are great things about who he is, but would it ever attract someone like myself, even if I was one of the best engineers? No, because you're intentionally jabbing. And I don't like, how are we focusing on the mission if you're too busy instigating? Like, are we going after the mission, or you just want to get more like, what are we focusing? What are we doing? Like, I think I would just be like, it would be a turn off for me, where if you're leading me, I don't know where you're leading me to.
Yeah, I think that's also a great, to your point, like, it's something that we got to start thinking about. I should have probably started thinking about this long ago, even when I first started my company, but it is something you got to think about eventually, which is like, what kind of culture do I even want to have? And it's something that, to be honest with you, I never thought about until recently. Like, I just was, how can I help as many people as I can through our programs and through our services? And then it became this thing of, okay, I need people to help me do that. And then now on this other side of it, it's like, oh, shit, I got to think about what do I want to create. Even thinking about, too, like, do I want, because one of the things I'll say, and this is not a knock on work from home as much as a knock on my leadership, I fucking hate work from home. Like, I told my entire team, I said, you guys are all moving to Arizona. And obviously I'm going to make it to the point that you guys are making enough to where it makes sense for you to want to move. But, like, I cannot stand work from home. It literally drives me insane because, and again, I'm curious to, hopefully you can change my mind on this because I'm such an asshole about it and I get a lot of flack for it. But I'm like, in my opinion, because for example, we had everyone fly out, my team flew out, which was phenomenal. This is how you know at least I'm on the right path, is that I had some of our team from the UK fly out on their own. They flew out and they wanted to be there. Like, it was amazing. Anyway. But in that, we had one day with me and my branding coach that does a lot of branding. We figured stuff out in like a half hour in person. The same shit that we've been, you know, hey, let's schedule a meeting on that. We talk for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. All right, we'll schedule another meeting. Like, if I had my team in person, like every day, we would only need to work 4 hours a day. But we would probably knock out so much stuff in such a short period of time. But, you know, I hear people saying, oh, I'm equally productive at home. If you're an outlier, probably, right? But even myself, like, I run my own company. I do better when I go to like a co-working spot because I pick up on the energy of other people and I'm way more productive than I'm even at home. So I don't know. What are your thoughts at work from home? Because for me, like, I if I could, like, if we were making that kind of money, it would be like, nope, everyone's going to and I don't mean all day, but like 4 hours a day, like, would be legit. Or
just certain days. I think that it would take being a creative with a hybrid. Like, I think hybrid is definitely very doable and feasible. It was funny because, like, you know, I've been working from, you know, air quotes home for a very long time, but I've always worked at spaces. And so it would be funny, like, my friends were like, oh, it must be night, like before the pandemic. Everybody had the smoke about how good it was to be home working all the time. And then they lasted a week. Oh my gosh, I need to get out. I need to talk to people. I was like, oh, I thought it was so wonderful just working from home all the time. Like, no, like, you do need the space, you know, to do it. So, like, even for myself, I go to my co-work space Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Just because on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have more things I do out and about. So it makes more sense for me to just be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I think it's like, the very reasons you gave is that it gives you community. And like, that's why I even like co-work spaces, because I get an opportunity to get to talk to people. You get to, like, we weren't put here to be alone. Yeah. Like, it doesn't help with personal skills. It doesn't help with really being a part of anything. And I think too, like, when we are doing things ourselves, I think that that's what keeps us sometimes foreseeing bigger vision or getting to that next level, because we are just so secluded. And I don't think it's ever too early to think about company culture. Like, I think that not thinking about it sooner can actually, again, suffocate a business, because it doesn't attract. Like, a lot of it is attraction, like, for people to want to work with you. As much as everyone, you see on social, like, work for yourself, it's not for everybody. Like, and nothing's wrong with it not working for you. Like, I'd rather be a part of an amazing team that's doing something great, and me leading an amazing team that's doing something great, than me just saying that I have my own company. So it's important to understand that culture, definitely when you're hiring people, because that's what's going to get people to want to be a part of what you're doing. And like, even with starting my event business, I had, for like the first 4 years, most of the people that worked for me were volunteers, because they wanted to be a part of what we were about, like what we were doing. And then I was paying a little bit, because again, I was figuring I started my company just out of a passion project. I didn't know, what I was doing, how I was growing it, because, obviously I'm not the kind of person that just does things always strategically. I like to get guided in the direction in which I'm supposed to go. And that's when I started to really take things seriously, because I had to think to myself, what did I want it to be like? And I'm like, since I have a lot of contractors that work with me, I'm like, I want to build a culture where if something's wrong, people can talk to me. I want it to be a culture where people, even though we're all separate, we're working together as a team. And I had to step in that. So if something didn't go right, I wasn't dictator yelling, freaking out or creating a wall, because again, that's not a space that people want to tell you when something's wrong. You're scaring people more or less than encouraging for them to have those uncomfortable conversations or hear you, which is, it's going to take growth, and it's also understanding what kind of person you want to attract. Like, I don't want it to be that everyone I'm talking to likes to argue. Like, who wants to work in a place like that? Like, so if my natural reaction is to put up a wall or respond a certain way because something isn't right, I'm just going to keep people around that respond to that, more or less to people like, hey, Jesse, we need to talk. These are the things I need to be able to have things work smoothly. And for me to listen and make sure people feel heard, which requires, again, the growth and leadership for me is like, it's all about, I think, when you're thinking about the culture, I don't think there's a right or wrong culture, because there's going to be a group of people that like everything. But you have to be honest. Would you want other people that are that type of personality all working together? Like, do you want to manage that kind of energy? And I want to manage leaders, but also people that, I don't want to say manage, guide and lead people that also have leadership qualities that are resolution focused and like solution focused, but also can have those uncomfortable conversations. Because if you're going to avoid every difficult conversation, like we ain't going to get along. I mean, I'm going to get agitated eventually. So it's just not going to work.
Like, the more you avoid, right, those conversations, the less you can grow. And I think the other thing that I've kind of realized too is that, one thing we've kind of figured out is we do best with entrepreneurs. Like, because like, with something you said before is that like some people are okay with the risk and want to grow their own vision. Then there's other people like, my team, they really enjoy that they can get behind the mission of Elevated, but still have their own independence, and that like I treat them as experts, because they are. I'm like, I'm going to rely on you, and if you don't have an idea, like I'll come up with one, but I'm always going to side with you because you're an expert in this. The one thing I did say, I did hear once from a client of mine, he does recruiting for sales, and him and I both are similar in that we don't like traditional salespeople. like just the kind of whatever feeling of them. You know, I just don't know. There's some people. There's
Yeah,
some
the grimy, slimy vibe.
And,
yeah.
But he goes, Raylan, the thing is, though, he goes, the thing you have to evaluate is number one, can they do the job? And he goes, number two, if you like them, they're probably not going to be a good salesperson, because you want someone who's not grimy, but you want someone who is assertive, who is a go-getter, all these things, and it may put you off. And I see a lot of CEOs make this mistake where they go, I don't like, they'll hire a VP of sales, for example. Oh, I don't like him. And it's like, well, do you want to like him or do you want him to do the job? Because that personality may rub you the wrong way, but you're going to kill it in that job. So it's this interesting balance, I think, of culture. And I'm thinking more about it of like, okay, well, we don't maybe want hunky-dory, everyone feels at home. It's like, you know, it's like this weird blend. I always say, like, what I'm trying to create, whether it's our mastermind with the Elevated Coaches Academy, or it's even my employees or my team, is I want to build almost like a jiu-jitsu gym, where in a gym, when you're competing against your teammates and you're sparring or you're rolling, as we call it, like, I am trying to tap you out. Like, I'm trying to win. But the second the bell's over, I go, hey, by the way, I think you would have got me if you would have did this. Because everyone's trying to help each other, but we're still trying to win. So what I've been trying to play around with is like, how can I create a culture where we're all pushing each other to want to get better? And I may piss you off, because there's been times where, like, you know, last week, it happens all the time, because my team is like really good at jiu-jitsu, and we have like a bunch of world champions and shit. I got tapped out, which doesn't happen to me very often. I got fucking pissed. I was like frustrated. And then right afterwards, I was like, all right, can you walk me through how you did that? And then he like put me in the position, we went through it. And I'm like, that's, to me, the culture that I would want to be a part of. And so I think that's why I'm trying to create it. But because the cultures I'm seeing right now, it's this weird thing of like, people aren't very good at taking coaching, which I think one of the final things I wanted to ask you about. I have two more questions. One is about actually your business coach and your relationship with that. And then I'm going to finish off with some book topics. But walk me through, because you've had a business coach for a long time. Because every time I talk to you, you've always referenced your coach and thing. So maybe talking about like the importance of having a coach and what it's done for you in the last, like, you know, few years that you've had them.
It's been a life-changing experience for me, because I think one is finding the best one is going to work with you and challenge you. And then someone is also developing themselves, because if your coach isn't working on developing him or her selves, then it's like, well, how are you going to help me? You know? And I think too is when you're having a coach, what's helped me with growth is that he has the ability to correct. But I think that that's important for us as entrepreneurs. Like, you can't know it all. You can't be in a space where if someone says something doesn't make sense, that you're not receptive to it. My business coach is very numbers focused, which I needed, because before I would have people that were, a lot of his clients are very, I guess you can say, manufacturing industry businesses. And it's all, you need to know your numbers for production. You need to, you know, so for him, I wasn't his typical client, but I didn't like, I mean, I remember there's this guy that used to be in our group coaching where he did, he used to get big, like $1 million contracts to do infrastructure repairs through his contracting company. So he would help with building the roads and get these $1 million and I remember like being in the conversation and he's talking about tax umbrellas and I'm like, oh, this is the conversation I need to be around. Like, I'm like, one day this is going to be perfect information for me to know how to, you know, legally hide some money. And so for him, what's helped me was that with me coming from an industry where people don't know a lot about numbers, he challenges me on my numbers all the time. So he'll be like, okay, so because I think for regular services, especially like the coaching world, there's not really cost. But with my event planning, there's cost. Like there's a lot of expenses. So understanding profit margins, because I can have an event that comes through that's $5,000, but what is my profit margin? So it's very easy to hit. I don't want to say easy because I know there's some people that might be in the event industry and they would love to get a $5,000 event or have a $20,000 a month. Like those aren't hard for my company, which I'm blessed to be able to say. But the thing about that is, how much are you keeping? How much does it cost to run your business? So he'll often say, Jesse, what are your goals? What are your financial goals? Like, challenging me, like, okay, so how much, like, what kind of life would that mean for you? Why is that important? So, like, it's not just taking my answers. He always drills in and then helps me with just thinking more. And so I met him in Louisiana when I was taking care of my mom. So I would have never crossed paths with him if the situation with my mom never occurred. So I'm grateful that we did, because, I mean, who would think that I would get somebody that can help me with my business in Shreveport, Louisiana? And most people don't even know where Shreveport, Louisiana is, but...
When do you think, like, it would be a good time to get a coach? Because I've gone back and forth on this, which is like, I feel like, number one, I feel like to get a business coach, it needs to be something similar. I don't know. Okay, what are your thoughts on this? I'm not saying I agree with the statement, by the way. I want to make sure this is clear. Okay. But what are your thoughts about people that are just business coaches? Their entire business is coaching versus hiring a business coach that is a coach on the side, but is also growing a different business. Like, which one do you feel like would be better?
Okay, so I think it depends on industry. So for someone like myself, would I typically go to someone that hasn't? No, because there's so much that's involved in what I do. So I need for someone to understand, like, you can't give me fluff. I need to know operations. Like, I need that, because that's how we sink or swim. You know, like, there's a lot of things that go into what I do. So I think that it depends on someone's business, and also understanding where that person is in their business. Because with certain industries, it's like, just like how you said you did those that event, and you learned a lot of stuff. Like, right now I have like 30 holiday parties between Saturday and the 19th.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I still have 17 pending signed contracts. So you can't, like, I would need someone to help me understand how to create structures, think through my processes, think about how do we, leverage ourselves for, it's a different kind of thing than me just making up arbitrage numbers, because arbitrage numbers can be an event that just doesn't make any money. So I think it's a little bit different, depending on what someone is needing. Because, like, even if someone had, let's say, I can't coach anyone that has a restaurant. Like, I can say it. I can help someone. So I have a client that I'm coaching. She does, her and her husband, they do painting services. I can coach her on that. But we're not talking about first in, first out. I know first in, first out because I had to learn it in business with inventory. But do I know all the ins and outs of, like, inventory checks and how to create a highly effective inventory system so you know when to reorder food because it has a shelf life? Like, there's so many different processes compared to, I mean, I see your face frown, like, thinking about.
Yeah, it's not for me. That's not for me.
Like, you have a 7-day window of making sure you order something and it not going bad and not having a bunch of it left before it expires. Like, that's a special kind of person that I haven't had to, explore yet in my career.
That's why, like, the reason I bring it up is because I think, I used to be really, really big on, if you're a new coach, new consultant, like, if you're in that kind of, atmosphere, that industry, then hire a business coach. But honestly, I feel like that depends on who you are. But I feel like more so the better hire, I think, for a coach would be a mindset coach for your first coach.
Yes, because I think that people often think that oh, if this person writes this manual on how to have a successful business, I'm going to do everything that they say in that book. Immediately did I read it? Hell no, you're not. You're not. You're going to fight it. You're going to read it and say, I'm going to do it better. I know different. So I'm going to not do it the way that the person, like, no, mindset is so much. And just how, like I shared in the beginning, I shared a mindset block. People see a talent in myself and I say, no, I don't do that. And I do a ton of work on myself. I've done a lot of mindset workshops. I read a lot. I go to therapy. Like, I am not new today to emotional intelligence and working on myself. So I still have blinders. So for someone to just jump into entrepreneurship, like, there are some people that just immediately get it, but it's not because of them just starting a business. It's because some of the life things that they went through before there that kind of prepared them for the success that they do get. But then eventually that don't work. Like, they need to grow more to get to that next level where that's not the norm. Those are the outliers. The norm is you getting in your way for as long as you allow yourself to, until you get that next breakthrough. So I do think mindset is a very important thing.
Because I made a post recently, or it's not out yet, but there's one that I said that, like, literally we grew, a multiple six-figure coaching agency, not from any crazy tactics, but from what we call the 5 laws of elevated, and they're mindset related. Like, one of the first laws is be impeccable with your word. The second is you are the source. Like, these are basically like, it's somewhat off of, you've been to Landmark, so similar to Landmark transformation training. So that was more impactful than any business coach I've ever had. Because in my opinion, most of the clients that I've seen, their problem isn't information. There's tons of information out there on YouTube and books and whatever, and these podcasts. The problem isn't information, it's your execution. And so the question is, okay, why are you not executing? And I think one of the most, for me anyway, the reason why we were able to grow the company the way we did, and the reason why we've been able to help clients, is simply based upon what do I got to do to stop avoiding? And there's so many things. Like, for example, I said earlier, I think even before we recorded, but I was recording handing off sales because I had a conversation with Kayla. And Kayla actually helped me with this. We were at dinner one night. I think I've told this story before, but we're having dinner one night, and I said, she's like, you got to hand off sales. Like, that's the last thing on your plate. We got to hand that off. And I go, but if I hand that off, what am I going to do all day? And she was like, be the CEO. Like, I had this thing of avoidance of, like, I didn't want to become the CEO, which was so stupid. It was like, it's my fucking company. But it was like, I had to go through. So for me, my biggest business growths have come from doing that work of going, what am I avoiding right now? Right? Like, what am I afraid of approaching? What is there a goal that seems to whatever? And then the second part to this, and I always jokingly say this, but the truth behind the success that we've had has been I'm too stupid to know I can't do something. Jesse, that's literally it. It's like when I see a goal, like I gave you the example of the agency. Like, that came about over a call, and I said, why can't I do this? Like, I'll figure it out, But other people, and this is where I've had to evolve as a coach, is because I used to coach people and say, hey, all I need you to do is to offer something to somebody once a day. That's it. Just go to your stories, say, I have this podcast. Hey, I have this offer, whatever, once a day. And they wouldn't fucking do it. And I was so confused. I'm like, it's the most simplest thing in the world. And then I'm like, if I don't address the block, they're never going to do it. So the 100%. The tactic doesn't matter at that point. So that's why I feel like, I'm not 100% on it, but I can change my mind. But I feel like mindset coach is probably the better coach to hire before business coach.
Yeah, I understand. I completely agree with that, because, like, when I had got to the point where my company was at a standstill with my event company. I was like 4 years into it, and I realized that my block was when something happened, I ran. Like, I assumed the absolute worst. So if something happened where an event didn't go well, I was not the kind of person that leaned into correction when it came to dealing with a customer complaint, and not listening, ready to defend myself. Like that's a big, like as much as people think that they can do it, we make things super personal. And so my thing was,
there with you. I'm right there with you. Like there's been so many, especially when we first started the agency. Oh my God. Like the feedback, I was getting, negative feedback. It wasn't even that bad. And I would defend it. I would go, here's why we made this decision. And then I was like, fuck, why am I? And then I realized, okay, for agreements, don't take it personally. I'm like, oh, I'm taking it personally. Like, shit. Because going into service, coaching is different. Because coaching, it's like, you got to listen to me because you're paying to listen to me. But when I became a service provider, because that's what the agency is, it was a different mindset. It was different.
Yeah. And that's the biggest challenge with people. Like, I mean, it's like people have a fear of sales. People have probably even a bigger fear of the other side of it because they don't want to deal with what we perceive as confrontation. And like, I'll give it a story. So I got this breakthrough when I was in Landmark, because I had this event that fell through. Someone that used to hire me every month, he always called for events. And I considered like a total ally, someone that loved working with me. Then he stopped calling right around when I had an issue happen at one of his other communities. I immediately, oh my gosh, he never wants to work with me, and so I don't even call to ask to find out why. Then a year later, I'm, in the transformation, I have the call and talk to him. And I was like, hey, I wanted to talk, and this is what I've been wanting to hear more about. And he's like, only reason why I stopped calling, he's like, at that moment, and I was like, and I thought you were mad at me. He's like, oh, you're talking about the moment when my mom got sick and I wasn't at work and da-da-da-da. He's like, it had nothing to do with you. And that's what that's what I do. I'll speak from my thing. I was making it about me, thinking that all of these worst case scenarios as to why this person wasn't calling me anymore. And it's been times people don't call me because they're not at that company anymore. But then when they go to a new company, guess who they call? Their budget got cut. That's why they're not calling. So when they get their budget back, guess who they're calling? But until I had to realize that worst thing that someone can say or do is just not work with you again. But there's going to be other clients out there that will, and still there's going to always be something to learn from those challenges. So my breakthrough mindset wise was embracing that and learning about those barriers. And then one of the things too is not being defensive and thinking everything's a personal attack, because in my space, we invoice people. Sometimes they do ACH and sometimes they mail checks. Now we get a lot more ACH, but before the pandemic, it was a lot of mailing checks. So if I didn't get paid on time, DC Jesse would then immediately think, oh, you think I'm the one? Okay, cool. You about to learn I am the one. I'm making this all up in my mind. Like, you are not going to get over on me. This is what you can't take my business serious. Oh, this, I'm making it mean, because essentially that's what mindset is. So we're making things mean something that it's not even meaning. And so I'm making it mean something. And so my inclination is, how dare you? Like, you will not get over on me. And so this is something that once I'm aware of now, I still got to catch myself to not always be in defensive and feeling offended, because most people aren't trying to offend me. It's just it's my lens that is coming through that's interpreting that.
Well, that's why I love talking to people like you, because one, I love doing these podcasts, especially again with people like you. I knew this would be a good one because people like us are very open and honest about, like, I see a lot of people online that are like, I made it. And what I want to do with this podcast and these conversations is show, like, yo, you're always working on something. Like, you're always, because even too, like what you just said, I'm dealing with the same thing of not taking things personally. Like for me right now, and my son, for example, he's like the one person that no matter how hard I try, I take everything that kid says personally. And it like hurts my feelings. I get angry and defensive, and he's 3. Okay, he's 3 years old, and he can get under my skin better than anything.
He's going to get underneath your skin a lot of times. They don't even know that they're getting underneath your skin.
But like the thing is though, is that like we think that once you learn this stuff, is that like, oh, I'm fixed. like, no, it's an ongoing thing. Like, there's so many things that I know inherently. Again, like, it's a part of the backbone of my company, which is the 5 laws. One of them being that you are the source, and I still have a hard time at times, putting blame on other things, other people, other situations. I get angry like at stupid shit, like, and it's just one of those things that I think you always have to continue to work on. I think what I would have loved, coming up earlier on in entrepreneurship is hearing people like you that have, had success in their career and hear them go, no, I'm still struggling with this. Because again, I think people we have in our head that, once I hit this dollar amount, like it all goes away and I'm good. Like, no, it gets worse.
No, it don't. Exactly. You have more triggers and you're more on the edge. And then you find out, guess what? There's something else that you weren't aware of because it's not the same. And I think that I jokingly said years ago, like, man, once you open it up, like you can't even close it. And then someone asked,
look,
you can't close it.
I said this a while ago. So in jiu-jitsu, it's a purple belt. Okay, so purple belt is like the worst belt ever, because at white belt, all your job is to survive as a white belt in jiu-jitsu, right? In blue belt, it's about defense. So not even about being good yet. Purple belt, you know enough to be dangerous. You shouldn't be caught at certain things, but it's the most awkward stage in your jiu-jitsu growth because you know what you shouldn't do and you do it still sometimes. My point is, in life, it's like when I found out about transformation, right? And I always say all the time that now that I know what I shouldn't be doing, and I get more mad now because I'm like, I know better. I was like, I literally told my mentor Shane one time, I was like, I kind of miss being, we call it being unconscious. I miss being unconscious because at least I didn't know when I was fucking up. Like it was way better then. But now I know I'm fucking up.
But it wasn't. No, because here's the thing is that because you were doing things not knowing that it had an implication, you were essentially walking around in your own long suffering, not knowing that you were the result of it, not because of other things. It was based off of what you were interpreting those things to be. So as much as we wish that wasn't open and we're like, things must have been so much nicer there. I was like, no, like I was always about to snap on people. I wasn't living fulfilled. I wasn't, living at my fullest. Like all of those things are
complaining about it all day and never doing anything about it.
Yeah, it's not a fulfilling life when you're not aware of it. And I think that, for someone that can possibly even look at me now, and I'll share, like I'm reading books, like I was I finished my last book and it was like a week or two that it took me to go into the store to go and get a new book. And I was like, y'all, I felt like such a bum. Like I always have books. Like I had audio books all day long, but I wanted a physical book, something that's going to make me sit down and focus more. And they were like, oh my gosh. They're like, no, like we aren't present to the fact that when we don't control what's coming in, the world is controlling what's coming in. And it's going to cause you to kind of revert back to those old ways. It's not going to be a fast change, but the things that might have been something you just shook off is going to possibly come back up for you and in another way. So I think mindset is so key because the things that it's not comfortable. And I think that, again, people, especially when they're getting into entrepreneurship, they don't understand the importance of it. I mean, because now you can see some of the big names of like Wall Street, the Trapper. Like he has this huge following, probably making crazy dough. But then he also talks about going to therapy because he's great at making money, but he's not the best at relationships. So, and he wants to have a healthy relationship. So yeah, you can, like, this is why it takes something for us to work on, because when we want to have a success in certain parts of our life, there's certain things that are blocking us when it comes to really embracing it, and understanding what those triggers are. So mindset is everything, because someone can be super talented, and have a lot to offer. But like myself, I just kept myself in, I'm the event planner girl. Mind you, I'm freaking, like, one day I was sitting outside, I was like, I'm smart as hell, yo. Like, why am I just making myself like this? Like, I'm freaking smart. Like, I was like, I know that there's a company that would pay me $200,000 because of the value that I know I would freaking put into their business. I'm like, because of who I am and what I can offer. Why am I sitting here putting myself as this little pocket of a person compared to the bigness? But I can say that not from a cocky space. Yeah. It's from recognizing who I am confidently, and depending on how you were raised, and I'm not going to get into all that, but like depending on how you were raised, you may have been discouraged for being seen and discouraged from being big because of actions and behaviors. So when you're having to now step into this bigness of who you are from a good space, it's not going to be the most comfortable. So you have to, again, work on yourself so that you can allow yourself to show up and really impact who you want to impact.
Yeah. Well, this was like one of my favorite episodes we ever did. Don't tell anybody. And we'll definitely have to do it again soon. Where can people find you so they can follow your journey and also pay attention to your new offers you'll be coming out with very soon, I know?
Yes. Yes, so you can find me at greeneyedambition.com, as well as on Instagram, Greeneyed Ambition, my YouTube channel. And then I have the podcast that will be coming out. And it's called I know, I'm excited about that. It's called What They Don't Tell Us, which is going to be an authentic conversation about things that we don't know. You know, often hear people talk about on different topics in entrepreneurship and adulting. So it's going to be a really great conversation. But Greeneyed Ambition, you'll start to see some of my more content about my favorite apps, the best system tips, how to be more productive. And it's not only going to be for those in the food and event industry. It's going to be for entrepreneurs that are service-based, that are looking for ways to get themselves together, organized, and stop banging their head against the table because they can't figure things out.
Well, I appreciate you joining. And again, like in the description in the podcast, as well as the YouTube channel, we'll have all your links too and stuff. So, but Jesse, I appreciate you as always. Thank you guys for listening.